Good morning, friends. I'm Sridhar, representing PL Raj Memorial IAS and IPS Coaching Academy. Friends, I recently on the main my examination for 2026 is going on, and it was completed with the general studies papers. Let me have a discussion on the futures pattern, on the testing standards of the general studies that would be useful for the aspirants who are in the process of preparing for the next exam, and also for those who attended may refresh their performance, to assess the performance. That's important in the professional aptitude of civil services preparation. Let me go through. So first, friends, as I have gone through the question paper of 2026 GS4 that deals with the ethics and human interface. The main questions which demands the descriptive answers. But the nature of the paper and the implicit perception of those who framed this question paper represent a shift from the traditional one to the new, a shift from the traditional one to the new one. We can brief it as from the traditional question paper, especially in the section A. In the section A part deals with the questions testing the description aptitude of the aspirants in regard to the components of ethics, the various components of ethics, values. It seems to be mostly concentrated on traditional papers, concentrated on the descriptive ethics, especially the section A. There was a clear demarcation. The section A deals with the descriptive ethics, demands the answers, how far the aspirant understand the ethical values, concepts and all in theoretical and descriptive one. In section A, there is a clear distinction between section A and section B. But now, the new shift in the pattern of GS4, where the section A paper deals mostly in aspect of the application of the ethical principles, application of the ethical principles, as well as applied ethics. In the applied ethics, in the niche domains of medical, technological ethics, medical ethics, civil services ethics. That is the applied ethics and application of ethics. Application of ethics in the hypothetical situations of the life. In day-to-day basis, we deals with the events and instances of testing our application skills and aptitude to resolve the conflict, the crisis of the ethical conflict of ethical principles, crisis of the ethical values, especially the ethical dilemmas. So most of the questions seems to be in the form of application of our ethical, of our wisdom and knowledge to resolve the ethical dilemmas in the hypothetical situations. Now that's the difference. It doesn't mean that yeah, you though you have the liberty of writing the answers in simply out of your empirical knowledge. It also gives score, but not to the extent of elevating one of cracking the exam. It need to have a score in which the answer should be in the form of the professional, a professional approaching the real life practical situations. That means your answer should be technical, at the same time, technical one of resolving the practical situations. Let me start our discussion. Let me go through. Let me dive into the pool of questions. It was section A, question 1A. Owing to the paucity of time, the university professor generates a PhD evaluation report using artificial intelligence and submit it with some modification. A PhD evaluation report using artificial intelligence, using AI, and submit it with some modifications. Discuss this from the perspective of accountability and integrity. Accountability and integrity. Friends, this should be the 150 words answer. 150 words answer with the 10 marks. The ideal answer should be in the form of first you represent this hypothetical situation in the context of accountability and integrity. It is due to paucity of the time. A university professor generates the PhD evaluation report using artificial intelligence and submit it with some modification. See, it is simply a question of ethical conflict, the ethical conflict or ethical dilemma, a question of ethical dilemma, a question of ethical dilemma between report, that means timely report, the timely report that the timely report that the university professor using AI come with alternate choice of his professional wisdom, a professional wisdom, alternate choice of the, it is an ethical dilemma between a report made out of AI on the professional wisdom of a university professor, the professional wisdom of knowledge accumulated for 20 years, not less than 20 years, that the PhD aspirants are expecting. So it is a ethical dilemma and conflict in the perceptions. A report made out of AI and alternate is the professional wisdom, in which it seems to be a ethical compromise of accountability and integrity. First, let me define the integrity and accountability here. The integrity and accountability to be defined in this context. That means integrity is being truthful to our conscience, even if we are not watched, even if we are not watched. And accountability is accepting the responsibility on the consequence of our actions, in which it led to the ethical compromise. That means the compromise of certain values as a thrust. A thrust is being compromised here. And the second one is that professional wisdom is compromised. Whenever, friends, when we confronted with the problem of ethical dilemmas or the crisis, the solution is of a framework of giving a hierarchy of values, hierarchy of the values. Here, the hierarchy, the professional wisdom is preferable than time. Professional wisdom is preferable than the time, concerns on the time. Here it is being compromised. So, our conclusion that it is a ethical compromise that a person with the status of the university professor has to avoid. And the professional wisdom should have the precedence over the time constraints. And AI should be used as an instrument of augmentation. AI should be used only as an instrument of the augmentation and not the instrument of creation. By that, the answer should be framed. First is highlighting the ethical dilemma, then elucidating what are the dilemmas, the choices of ethical choices. That means report of AI to avoid time constraint, and the report of professional wisdom is their expectations, in which accountability and integrity, explanations, and the way it is compromised, and to resolve the ethical dilemma, the preference should be for the professional wisdom than of time constraint. And AI should be used only as an instrument of augmentation and assistance, and it should not replace the profession. It should not replace the profession. That should be our answer. Okay. Then question 1B. A business house is working on a project. A business house is working on a project. That could displace a forest community from their habitat. As the administrative officer of the district, what are the ethical challenges you like to face? What are the ethical challenges? That means a business house working on a project that could displace a forest community from their habitat. Displace the forest community from their habitat. What are the ethical? First, let me highlight the consequence of this project. The displacement leads to the problem of alienation of the community. That means alienation from the sources of livelihood, alienation from the process and means of livelihood. It leads to a complete disaster. That is the consequence. Consequence is more than the ethical challenge. It is the ethical concerns that the district magistrate, that the administrative officer of a district confront with ethical concerns, ethical concern on livelihood alienation, then ethical concern on the rehabilitation and rehabilitation and resettlement, then ethical concerns on community participation, consent, community consent on it. It is the ethical concerns. How to be resolved? How to be resolved? It is the question of the compassion. Compassion in the ethical, compassion in governance to be resolved. The resolution should be resolved. A sensitivity of the compassion should be in every stage. Then the second one is that following the code or the code of procedures, like the social audit, environmental impact assessment, social audit, and also all the protocols of the rehabilitation and resettlement with a great sensitivity of the compassion in it. So, as an administrative officer of the district, we have to express our attitude of compassion, and compassion to the possible extent of the following the procedures as the social audit, the impact assessment, alternative choice, community participation and planning, and our community participation on the protocols of rehabilitation and the resettlements. So it is the problem of ethical concerns more than the ethical challenges. Then the 2A, question 2A. An endangered tribe has developed a severe skeletal deformity. A university research has identified a mineral supplement as a possible remedy through the clinical trials are yet to be conducted. So the district magistrate used this research on the tribe, discuss research on the tribe. Should the district magistrate use this research on the tribe? Discuss the perspective of medical and administrative ethics. Say the question that deals with applied ethics as the medical ethics and the administrative ethics. The medical ethics highlights the procedures of clinical trials. The procedures of it's a national sanctity. That means national security is a question of national sanctity and sovereignty, whereas the human rights is of the individual one. It is the ethical dilemmas, or a conflict between the two values. Whenever the conflict between the values or the ethical principles, we have to apply the hierarchy of the values. The hierarchy of the values is the universal value of the individual rights seems to be in the topmost hierarchy. But the national security is indispensable. National security is the indispensable one, even to secure that individual rights. Indispensable one, even to secure that individual rights. So, see, there's this ethical dilemma to be resolved by giving preference to the measures of national security, and has to be argued logically, because only a strong nation can preserve a strong framework of conditions for the human rights. conditions for the human rights. Then second, security. Security is the part of the individual liberty. And third, security is the responsibility. Security is the responsibility. So the resolution of this ethical dilemma depends upon, is based on case to case. Any measure should have the nexus, any measure to have the nexus of absolute national security, national security, and case to case that the national security should have the preference. National security should have the preference when it violates, because national security is a question of collectivity. It's a concern of collectivity, and it is the duty of the state. Duty of the state. So the resolution of the ethical dilemmas and conflict is to be based on case to case, the case to case in which the nexus of the measure and the objective of the measure, intention of the measures, and the intention of the measures, then the impact and consequence of the measures has to be taken into account. This can be explained even with the example, any example. Example in which the Operation Sindoor, where the government instructed the return of Pakistani nationals residing in India, on the question of the national security. We can quote with the example. We can discuss with the example also. So, in case of ethical dilemmas of national security and national rights of the citizens and the rights of the state, right of the state actions and the universal principles of the human rights, in that we have resolution to be done in case-to-case basis, where the precedence to be given with the national security, and also the factors of any measures of national security should have the nexus, then intention of the measures, then consequence and the impact of the measures to be made for assessment. That is the answer for the question 2B. Then 3A. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar has cautioned that the employing civil disobedience within a constitutional democracy equates to endorsing anarchy. How should the modern democracies navigate the ethical dilemmas forced by the civil disobedience movement and aim to promote the social justice against the policies that may arise, the genuine concerns? It is the ethical dilemmas between a constitutional democratic system and any public civil society protest movements, as the civil disobedience movement, as Dr. Ambedkar has cautioned. The problem of that civil disobedience movement and the issues are mostly because of the dysfunction of the institutions in the constitutional democracy, dysfunctions of the institutions in the constitution. So ethical dilemma here has to be dealt with the conflict between constitutional democracy, principles of constitutional democracy, and the public protest and the protest movements as the civil disobedience movement, as Dr. Ambedkar called it as anarchy. It is anarchy that the conscience of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar stating anarchy to the condition if that civil disobedience movement seems to be attempting destabilize the constitutional democratic systems, to destabilize or to destroy the institutions, For example, recently, that movement against the leak of the question paper has gone to the extent of attacking on Parliament. That is the condition, ideal condition stated by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. If the civil society movement, it is not an apparent conflict between public protest and the constitutional democratic system as the anarchy, as Dr. B.R. Ambedkar stated. What it is stated as a concern to the level when the civil disobedience movement gone to the extent of destroying democratic institutions, gone to the destroy. So the ethical dilemma has to be resolved, in the form of leadership, in the form of the leadership brilliance, leadership brilliance in the form of communications. Recently, the Prime Minister of India able to mitigate the problem by daily communications, in the form of the communications, and restoring the thrust on institutional channels. That means the measures of remedy and to prohibit the leak in the question papers in the future. Say what I like to suggest, friends. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar warned it as an anarchy, endorsed it as an anarchy, not of an apparent conflict between the civil disobedience movement and the constitutional democracy, but at the stage of conflict, when going beyond the control and collapsing on, that is stated the anarchy, in which the ethical dilemma can be resolved. Ethical dilemma can be resolved in the form of the public engagements, communications, leadership results. Then the measures of restoring the thrust, and reorganize the institutions, reforming the institutions to restore the thrust. That is the way that we have to answer. Then question number 3B. In what way can an Indian administrative officer apply Gandhi's notion of trusteeship to ensure fairness in the governance? Gandhi's notion of trusteeship in managing the national wealth. Gandhi's notion of trusteeship in the role of government, or the role of state to the people, in which an Indian IAS, Indian administrative officer, can enforce the notion of trusteeship by, in the form of acknowledging himself as a steward, responsibility of the resources, and the institutions, or responsibility of the institution steward. It is tenure-based, not of an authority, by discarding the sense of authority. Then the third one is the avoiding the 7 sins, avoiding some of the components of 7 sins that the Gandhi stated. The components of the 7 sins. That means authority without, to avoid a sin of authority, exercising authority without compassion. By that, Indian administrative officer can apply stewardship by discarding himself as an official authority, but of considering himself as a steward with the responsibility of being the guardian one, and to avoid the excess in enforcement, and should have the sense of compassion. That should be the framework of answer. Shakespeare in Henry IV says, the arms are fair when the intent of bearing them is just. What ethical implications does this have in governance? Friends, we are not the expert in studying Shakespeare and his dramas as Henry IV. We hadn't gone. But the conscience of this praise, the arms are fair when the intent of bearing them in just. Arms are fair. It also deals with the ethical dilemma as armed authority of the state is against to the principles of governance, democratic governance. We can discuss in the context of conditions of ethical conflict between a powerful state, authoritarian state, against the welfare state, an authoritarian state against to the welfare state. We can construct it as ethical implication here. It is a fairness. For an authoritarian state. Fairness for an authoritarian state in the conditions when demand. The conditions demand, that means it should be the conditions of justice. Yeah, that means a authoritarian state, armed authoritarian state is valid based on the utilitarian welfare for the society. The utilitarian welfare, conferring the justice, conferring the happiness, conferring the welfare, and conferring peace and stability. To establish a public order and moralities. If the condition required an armed state, that should be the conscience of the Shakespeare. Because we hadn't studied the Shakespeare to be truthful. I hadn't studied the Shakespeare's Henry IV, but the praise highlights, that is concise highlights that is approval for the armed, powerful authoritarian state when the conditions demand to promote. So it should be argued as a valid in the utilitarian context. Because if the armed authoritarian state confers the maximum good of maximum welfare and good for the people, so it is valid. That is the ethical implications. Ethical implications is based on the result or the consequences of the authoritarian state. That should be the answers. Then the 4B, 4A, citing the serious adverse effect of a long-term medication, a doctor convinced the family of a female patient for surgery. This led to the patient to reluctantly consent for the surgery, though her original choice was to opt for medication. Explain the concept of paternalism and the beneficence and the beneficence by analyzing the doctor's action. The concept of paternalism and beneficence, that the doctor's action highlights. One is the beneficence. One is to avoid, to prohibit the side effects of the long-term treatments. That means adverse effect, serious side effect of the long-term treatment. Then the second one is the long-term medication leads to the side effects that the doctor consider. Second one is the doctor's confidence of the surgery solution. Then paternalism here is out of his wisdom, the professional wisdom, and out of his attitude of human care, because human care, the act of doctor is valid because it reflects the conscience of his the Hippocratic oath that he has taken, Hippocrates oath that the doctor has taken, and it is made out of his personal, the professional wisdom, and here the doctor's action should be based, is preferred to have more, building a thrust, the thrust by explaining the long-term beneficence of the action, to win the patient's consent. But the doctor's action is valid because of his paternalistic attitude, which based on the principle of human care and beneficence of avoiding the long-term efforts. The answer should be based on this. Then the 4B, efficiency is doing the right things right, while the effectiveness is doing the right thing. How do you strike a balance between the two to enhance productivity? Effectiveness, friends, deals with the procedures. That means effectiveness is the management question, friends. Effectiveness deals with the procedures that to be followed, the instruments, the use of resources. Effectiveness is the procedures of using the resources. That is effectiveness. Efficiency deals with the objective and intentions of the effective use. For example, friends, effectiveness is of launching a space vehicle, a geostationary vehicle, and properly positioning the vehicle out of the expertise, expertise in the space technology. That is effectiveness. Whereas efficiency is a policy matter, that positioning the geostationary vehicle and its utility. The utility of the project. So it is a need of synchronizing the efficiency of policy decisions and effectiveness of the enforcement decisions. Friends, to me, efficiency deals with the attitude. and effectiveness deals with the aptitude. Synchronizing the attitude and the aptitude of the efficiency and the effectiveness would enhance productivity, productivity that is a striking balance to enhance the productivity seems to be the significant qualities of a civil servant as well as qualities of the welfare state in the modern age. That is the efficiency and the effectiveness. Then 5A. Usually schools working in remote areas do not fully comply with the government regulations. Schools working in the remote areas do not comply with the government regulations. However, if the rules are enforced strictly, it would mean to most schools closing down. How should an administrator strike a balance between enforcement of rules and the educational rights to the children's? Enforcement of rules and the educational rights to the children's. Friends, this apparently seems to be ethical dilemma. Apparently, it seems to be an ethical dilemma between compliance of the government regulations and the attendance. It seems to be an ethical dilemma, but implicitly it is a question. It is a question of institutional failure. Institutional failure to carry out the thrust and to promote the significance of education in the remote area, among the societies in the remote areas. It is the institutional failure to construct the public thrust as well as the public relations. So, administrator has to focus mostly on these areas of restoring the trust, then engagement with the community, participating with the community, and to find out the common grounds between community engagement and the regulations of compliance to promote the education. It is the administrative interventions to restore the trust and to promote the significance of the education in which the administrator has to be focused, where the administrator has to perform himself as a leader with a paternalistic attitude of motivating the societies and the community leaders of the remote areas. That is the answer for 5A. Then 5B. In international relations, the ethical considerations are often subjugated to the strategic interest of the nation states. Discuss it from the ethical perspective. In the international relations, the ethical considerations are subjugated to the strategic interest of the nation states. A strategy. Friends, it is actually an ethical conflict between realism in the international politics, and the values in the international politics. That means the universal values in the international politics. Universal values. That means a conflict between reality and idealness, idealism, a conflict between the reality and the idealism. In the reality and the idealism, it is a polarized conflict in the international relations. A polarized conflict in the international relations to be resolved, resolutions in the form of, it is the resolution in the form of promoting the spirit of the universal brotherhood, multilateralism, supporting the multilateralism, promoting the universal brotherhood. That means promoting an attitude, a global attitude of human care, then the values, promoting the values in international relations as the transparency on the global stewardship. You can quote with the example for India. The government of India's attitude of Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam, and enforced with the spirit of non-alignment, in which a constructive neutrality able to mitigate the regional problems, So it is the international relations of the highlight to be made, as it was an ethical conflict between realism in the politics, international politics, realism in the international relations, and the idealism. Realism and the idealism. The solutions should be based on promoting the universal brotherhood between the nation states, then promoting multilateralism in development, multilateralism in cooperation, and building an attitude based on the human care, in which the example, the government of India's Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam, can be quoted. Then 6A, on the request of the personal assistant, the district magistrate stops the transfer of a school teacher who takes private tuitions for his daughter diagnosed with the learning disability. On the request of the personal assistants, the DM, a district magistrate, stops the transfer of the school teacher who takes private tuitions for his daughter diagnosed with the learning disability, daughter of PA to DM. In this context, discussed as aspects of empathy versus compliance. Empathy versus compliance. Here the empathy. The empathy is the student of learning disability and the personal care then it is a conflict with, it comes in conflict with compliance of rules, compliance with the rules of the school teacher undertaking private, the rules of transfer, administrative rules. So it is in conflict. Whenever the conflict highlights, what I suggest is, again, we should place the hierarchy of the values of conflict. The hierarchy here is the hierarchy of values. The values, that means compassion. Compassion is the topmost value when to deal with the administrative rules. Compassion has to given preference, in which the DM act of intervention should not be an isolated case. If it is an isolated case, it is against the spirit of administrative rules. It should not be an isolative case, but it should be an innovative case. By that, administrative rules has to be reformed to take care of this the students of disabilities, to have access to education. So administrative rules should be added innovation in which the district magistrate has to employ. So it is the compassion has to take the preference over the administrative rule, because in this case the compulsion to be applied because of the students of knowing disability, and the administrative rules shall not be taken as it could be mended for the convenience. So it has to be a reform, and it should be an innovative case, initiative. It should be an initiative, a case of initiative of framing the administrative rules with the birth of dealing with these special children's. So this should be the framework of answer. Friends, in these sections, that what we have gone is mostly the question of ethical dilemmas, then the conflict of ethical principles, So it almost all the questions from the local level administration to the international relations are dealing with this ethical dilemmas, conflict of values, special circumstances. For all this, what I like to suggest, the solutions could be done with the framework of giving a hierarchy. Then second one is the principle of universal imperatives. Then applying the constitutional moralities in any actions. Every action has to be taken as the individual case and to be assessed with the spirit of constitutional moralities. So section A deals with application of ethics and the applied ethics. Application of ethics and the applied ethics. Though it is not the cases, but it is a situation and the context of dealing the issues of ethical dilemmas. Whenever the ethical dilemma apply, in which we have to apply the yardstick of hierarchicalization of values and giving precedence to the universal imperatives that Immanuel Kant stated. There are certain categorical imperatives that we should not do, we should not violate. There are certain maxims that we have to follow and conform. So that is a simple. The ethical dilemma means hierarchy of values of conflict and to resolve with the dominance given to the universal values. Then the section B, question number 7. Lata, as a mother of 2 children, was admitted to the hospital for acute abdominal pain. Her sister-in-law Sujata accompanied her. Dr. Mansi examined Lata and recommended a diagnostic laparoscopy. Lata's consent was taken to conduct the medical procedure under general anesthesia. A case. During the laparoscopy, Dr. Mansi team discovered a tumor in the Lata's uterus. On a closer examination, that the tumor is malignant. One option before Dr. Mansi was to extract the sample for the biopsy. In that case, if the tumor was malignant, Lata would undergo another surgery for the removal of the uterus. an alternative to remove the uterus immediately. The Dr. Munshi has to take the quick decision. Lata was under general anesthesia. Doctor explained the situation to Sujata, agreed with the Dr. Munshi recommended for the hysterectomy, with wherein the Lata's uterus would be removed to avoid the risk and the pain of undergoing another surgery. Dr. Munshi removed Lata's uterus and receiving the Sujata's consent in writing. Lata was informed of this next day. She was upset and felt betrayed as she had not consented to the removal of it. She complained to the police, who tried to convince her that Dr. Munshi has acted with a good intention to help the patient. Sujata was in the same position. However, the Lata was not convinced and decided to approach her. What are the ethical issues involved in the case? What are the ethical issues? Ethical issues mostly deals with the medical ethics. Medical ethics, the important ethical issue, that is the consent. The consent. Then the second one is the consent, the individual rights of the consent. Second one is the ethical issue of the doctor's paternalistic attitude of the human care. Doctor's paternalistic attitude of the human care. Human care, that means human care. That are the two of the ethical issues primarily. Then moral conduct of the doctor is valid because the consent was taken as legally valid from the guardian of Lata at the time she is in anesthesia. Then the second one is moral code of the conduct. Moral code of the conduct, that means a paternalism out of his wisdom to avoid a second surgery. To avoid second surgery. If the doctor's act was not done, she would have undergone second surgery. It seems to be malignant conditions may lead even to some irreversible form. So that is the valid to his hypocrite the oath, to his professional wisdom, valid. To my concerns, I discuss it as valid. Then Ravi is a senior police officer with a vast experience in the riot control and cyber policing. Since 1 year, he has been the superintendent of police of a district with a history of frequent rioting. Last year, Ravi has sought installation of the AI-enabled software for predictive policing. This system has been operational for approximately 6 months. The new system employs the advanced algorithms for capturing the biometric data of the persons in a crowd and swiftly relating to the data library. This has enabled the police to identify the persons involved in various crimes. The system has identified an immigrant and the low-income neighborhood as the center for the gang violence and drug trafficking. Aided by this AI analysis, the local police has focused its patrolling, preventive detention, establishing checkpoints. Consequently, the public order and the law enforcement are visibly improved. Last week, some community leaders, civil rights lawyers, and the human rights activists visited the Ravi's office, and they submitted a memorandum that the new system was faulty and it's based on the incorrect historical data caused by the social biases and the discriminatory policing. The memorandum also alleged that the increased surveillance has created a climate of tension among the residents. This feeling is aggravated by the fact that the residents are not aware of the data noted against this. What are the ethical issues? Ethical issues. One, the first of the ethical issues is of the issue of human rights. Human rights of being under surveillance. Being under surveillance. Then second one is application of AI for the decisions. For the decisions, application of the AI for the decisions, for the police decisions is simply against to the spirit of our golden triangle, constitutional provisions of golden triangle, Article 14, 19, and 21, against the principle of the golden triangle. Then the third one is the system of AI analysis lacks human sensation, human sensitivity. Fourth one is it is biased. It seems to be the bias. It seems to be the biased. Then the fifth one, in the police point of view, it is the administrative ethics to avoid the offenses, the crimes, offenses of the crimes. Placing myself in the Ravi's role and discuss the alternatives available. Alternatives available is of community policing, is of the community policing. Community policing. The alternatives available is of the community participation and restoring the trust that optimizes the policing profession with ethics. That should be the answer. Then question number 9. Seema is a senior bureaucrat with a reputation of honesty and the professional efficiency. She has recently been posted as a district collector of the Surinder Nagar, where the large industrial area is just been established. The new industrial area caused many farmers to submit applications for the change of the land use to convert the farmlands into the residential area. This is unusually large backlog of the application awaiting processing. Seema noticed that some applications have been approved selectively with no visible chronological pattern. The case files showed a few complaints of some approvals are being subject to the recipient of large bribes from the applicants. On further fact-finding, Seema realizes that the small group of toads was controlling this illegal activity through some subordinate officials and the collectors in the collectorate. This had created a fear in the other employees who were reluctant to process any applications. Resulting backlog has been filing, thereby hindering the socio-economic process, causes public distrust. The case is simply an administrative logjam here. Seema was faced with the moral and the administrative challenge of dismantling this corruption network without hampering the daily administrative operations. An aggressive internal investigation would result in institutional resistance and possibly a backlash from the labor union. Conversely, ignoring this fact would encourage the wrongdoers unnecessarily continue this unavoidable harassment to the populace. Conversely, ignoring the situation. What are the ethical issues here? Ethical issues, the ethical issues, that means discriminations. Then the administrative backlog. Then corruption, the prime ethical issue, corruption. Then the apathy, administrative apathy, are all the ethical issues. And the public welfare, the welfare programs, because of delay, that is delay, and loss of public mistrust, public trust, loss of public trust. What are the options open to Seema? She has the option as an aggressive anti-corruption drive, that may lead to a greater disruption, greater depression, and further exasperate with more complexity. Then the second one is the second option. The second option that she can go for the administrative changes in the form of applying employing digital technology in the form of the employing digital technology. Then administrative changes in the form of community, opening channels of community participation, channels of community participation, on on the personal intuitions, motivating the people, motivating the people. Then the encouraging the staff of prudent start of prudent and building trust among those peoples, building trust amongst those officials who are against to the corruption. These are the options. These are the options. The second one, these are the options. Identify the recommended option. Recommended option is the second one, the employing technology, then new channels of direct relations, then creating public vigilance, motivating the public and motivating the officials and the employees who are against to the corruption, against to the corruption, and creating vigilance even in the departments itself. That should be the recommended options. Then 10, because as a government officer with over a decade of service in public administration, he has recently moved as a district collector in Nainipura, a remote village bordering the forest. Due to Nainipura's local level of economic development, one of the major duties is to ensure proper functioning of public distribution system among the weaker sections, economically weaker sections. During his on-site visit, Vikas has apprised the typical administrative challenge in operating PDRs. To prevent leakages, all distributors are required to carry out real-time biometric identification of the beneficiaries whose fingerprints are tailed with the identity cards records. This was creating the problem and the operating system sometimes rejected public fingerprints matching in the case of growing children's manual laborers and the some citizens, senior citizens. This problem was further compounded in the periods of the low Wi-Fi connectivity. The distributors of such cases are restored to the personal discretion and they could be identified when they could identify. Distributors in such cases resorted to the personal discretion where they could identify the recipient. Because has to address this problem on priority. Strictly adhering to the government regulations would ensure the fiscal probity that would greatly trouble the proposed beneficiary. Economically weaker sections, it may even impinge on their fundamental life as per the Article 21 of conversely, leaving the resolution solely to the discretion of the distributor would lead to misuse and the engager. What are the options open to the Vikas? What are the options open to the Vikas? And how should the balance fiscal probity with the empathy towards designated beneficiaries? Option, the option to the Vikas that because of the problems because of the nature of the geography border district, the forest regions, because of the forest region and the economically weaker sections, and the known for the deficit in applying the technology and all. In these conditions, a responsible officer should have a extended paternalistic attitude in the form of the focused measures of engaging with the communities, then creating methods, alternate methods for identification, and alternate methods, the more methods to find out the targeted sections of the welfare, targeted sections of welfare. It need more of a decentralized role, to get participate with the public. By that, the designated beneficiaries are properly identified, and of using the technology, with the other methods of identification, that is the way to prevent the leakage, corruption on the all the measures should aim for avoiding discussions, the methods to aim for building the trust, and the people has to be encouraged to come out with alternative measures, alternative method of getting the welfare. Then the ethics of using technology as the gatekeeper of the welfare schemes. Our technology has the merits and the demerits. Merits is technology leakage, avoid intermediaries. And the technology at the same time has the demerit of lack of human sensitivity in the special cases. So using technology as a gatekeeper of the welfare scheme can be a suggestive one, but the technology should be in the control of administrative leadership. Because of necessity of the human factor while dealing with economically weaker sections. The people of economically weaker sections trust more on the people than of the technology. So it is a technology should be accompanied with human factor of sensitivity and values to make the welfare scheme as a successful one. So as a successful one, you say successful. Simply depending on the technology may sometimes lead to even corruption. For example, the Pradhan Mantri, the bogus beneficiaries scam of Pradhan Mantri Mandan Yojana, because of simply relying on the technology. So it need a human factor to implement the the technology. For technology should be used in the governance for the argumentation, and the use of technology accompanied with the human decisions would be prudent for welfare. Then, question 11, case 11, Rajapuram is a border district. Jara and Biru are the two communities are in the conflict. They are continual conflict with each other. Social fabric is fractured and demand mending. Ethnic tensions between the two communities have erupted into violence. A border district, as like the Manipur problem here, the problem between the Kukis and the Metis. The ethnic tension between the two communities erupted into violence, resulting in large number of deaths. The stated causes are conflicting land claims, uneven resource allocations, and inadequate political representation in the governing bodies. Separate relief camps have to be created for the two communities. The situation is volatile and appears to be getting out of control. Rajan has been appointed the district magistrate of the Rajapuram and tasked to quickly get into the situation under control. His immediate action includes restoring administrative authority, reopening the highways, initiating the peace talks. On taking over his appointment, Rajan realized the inter-community rivalry has swept into the local administration and the police, with the functional neutrality being immediate casualty. It has made more the communities distrustful of the government. The neighboring country could utilize the opportunity to spur the insurgent activities and further aggravate the situation. Rajan favored a controlled approach, starting with the opening of highway to restore food and medical supplies. He toyed with the idea of requisitioning CRPF unit with the help to help restore administration. What are they discuss the ethical issues that need to be addressed here? The ethical issues that need to be addressed. One is trust. One is the thrust, public thrust on the government. Then the second one is equality in opportunities and development. Equality, equal distribution of the wealth. Second issue. Then the third one is the administrative the politicized future of the administratives, lack of administrative neutrality. The fourth one is lack of administrative neutrality. These are the ethical issues. Then the consequences, the concerns is the stability, peace, as well as the concern of the external influence, concern on the external influence. What are the options open to Rajan? Rajan's options is as open. More than the options, the Rajan's options could be categorized into short term and the long term. Short term and the long term. Short term options, that means to closing the village, closing the districts, and establish firm action on establishing law and order. Then the dialogue with the community leaders. That is, the short-term options are mostly based on restoring the trust. Then the long-term options is of promoting development, promoting a sense of administrative neutrality. Then the infrastructures development of the infrastructures, and the efficiency in promoting welfare programs, So it can be modeled with the example of the government of India's action in the Buster district. Which option would ensure the protection of his non-partition image with the option is the long-term measures with the community participation. Is the optimized option, is the preferable option of the changing the image of the administrative failure and restoring the trust. Then the restoring the trust, that should be the answer. Then 12, Ajit has been recently promoted as the head of Department of the Weapons Sales, TWS, in the Ministry of Defense Promotion, MTP. His charter of duties including international sales of weapons produced domestically by the Ministry of Defense. 2 recent wars, MDP weapons have performed admirably, resulting in many countries showing interest in buying them, particularly the long-range artillery and the missiles. Country A and country B have asked for this system. However, production constraint restrict the Department of Sales accept only one purchase order. Country A is developing nations with the sound technology base. The MDP is planning. Prime Ministry of Defense Production is planning R&D collaborations with it for the next generation of the weapons. It is not a part of any security alliance. The country A is not a part of any security alliance and need weapons for protection for the troublesome neighbor. It seeks larger acquisition of the long-term loan. Country B is also a developing nation. Military strength is its priority, with the military budget often ingressing into allocations for the human resources and the infrastructure development. It is in security alliance with the superpower, which has a large military base, as like Pakistan, and periodically allocate its financial grants, as like Pakistan, its Mecca Pact. It is a member of the economic bloc, with the government is currently negotiating a free trade agreement. It is not a signatory of the NPT, but possesses the small nuclear weapons and delivery system. It supports some guerrilla forces abroad, as like Pakistan. Pakistan, as like Iran. It has sought a smaller acquisition and is prepared to make some advance payment, ready to purchase. It is currently negotiating arm purchases with other countries, other nations. Ajit discusses this case with his counterparts in a related department. Therein, the significant economic benefit, employment generation, and the stronger diplomatic relations arises from this sale are highlighted. It was also emphasized that refusing the deal would result in the country B purchasing weapons from the other country. Okay, Ajit was aware that in arms sales, due diligence in each state was pivotal and ensure conformity to the national policy of international treaties. You see, friends, you can analog this case of the government of India, and the India waged a war in Operation Sindhu that made the Indian weapons to be attractable, in which Vietnam is ready to purchase Philippines. Vietnam ready to purchase. Vietnam is a nation which needs the military arsenals to resist the threat of China. And the case you take, the Iran is also ready to purchase means discuss the option available to which option should we select, that means selling arms to other countries should have certain policy priorities. One is our strategic interest. Arms sale is not a sale of merchandise. It is the sale of our country's security, matters of our country's security and the international relations. So options available to Ajit, you should have a format criteria for choosing the country B or country A. That means our own security interest, then the international peace and harmony has to be taken, as well as the human rights, the universal rights, that the country B gives priority to the military expenditure in compromising the people's development. So, he has the option whether the arms sales is for the profit or the arms sales is for international cooperation. In that, Ajit has to select a country A that he should select, because country A is known for a responsible nation. I was in need, and country A is also known for a thrust and conducive for international relations. How can Ajit balance a nation's economic and strategic interest with the ethical consideration? A nation's economic and strategical interest with the ethical consideration, where the ethics of universal and ethics of the national interest. In universal interest, it is the human rights, then international peace and brotherhood. Whereas in national interest, our strategic interest of long-term cooperation has to be taken into account. So the ethical consideration should be based on emphasis on the universal human rights, international brotherhood, peace, and also our national interest of strategic, our national security and our strategic autonomy, as well as the long-term cooperation, long-term cooperation with other nations. So this seems to be the outline that I have discussed, friends. Once again, I like to brief that Section A represents certain context and conditions of testing our wisdom of and understanding of ethical concepts, especially the way that we can resolve the ethical dilemmas, or aptitude of resolving the ethical dilemmas. So Section A has to be answered in the context, in the form of application of descriptive ethics to resolve the practical ethical dilemmas, the conditions to resolve the conditions of conflict of ethical principles. And Section B, to me, Section B seems to be the easiest one, that simply it requests us to elucidate the ethical issues and placing ourselves in the context, and to highlight what are the issues and what are the solutions for that. So this seems to be a brief format of resolving the GS paper 4. I hope this will be useful even for the preparation for the next one, and it would be useful to retrace and to have a proper estimate of your answers in regard to the marks.